first months of my marriage, I was so frustrated during an argument with my husband that I scratched his face and left a mark. I haven't done it again, but I don't ever want to repeat. Can you help me uncover where this propensity for violence is coming from before we bring children into this house? That's from Sierra and Chris.
Oh, hey guys, how's it going?
We're doing well. How are you?
Doing well. Good. So there are two things. First of all, I just hope it was like a cool pirate scar so that he can, talk about adventures in the outback. Number one. Number two.
It doesn't look terrible.
Yeah. Number two, as a husband, I'm regret to inform you, Chris, that I'm very sorry that you provoked your innocent wife to this degree and that she attacked you for absolutely no reason. And please stop throwing your face into her nails. That's, they just need to get that across. What was the fight about? Do you recall?
Oh, God. So to be clear, for most of our marriage, our arguments have been about extremely topical things and never, very seriously, we have very few arguments about, like, what the definition of doing the dishes is and, like, damn it, you keep leaving the garage door open and stuff like that. We really don't argue about those kinds of things very often. Chris was in the process of writing a book. So we're at one point we're talking about the book. In the book, he's talking about how there are these existential conflicts.
It's syntax.
It was an argument about grammar. That's the short story. The long story is we were arguing specifically about basically why, like the context for why gays and evangelical Christians so often get into conflict over kind of the definition of sin and, whether people who are gay are any worse off as sinners because they are, homosexual as their orientation and these sorts of things. So we're arguing. Okay. Yes, you can.
Well, so there was a phrasing in there where I said that people will conflate hatred and fear and then confuse the two or something. And we were arguing about the ordering of those words and the intention behind it. And
sure. It's hard to hate something that can't do you any damage.
Right.
So you have to be afraid of something in order to get the fear is the flight and the hate is the fight, right? Fight or flight.
Exactly. Yeah. And they like to conflate because no one wants to be thought of as fearful or cowardly. So they'll conflate the opposition with fear and then call you fearful and in that conflation, they can call you hateful as well. And we had been arguing about syntax, and it got fairly heated, but it was still about the writing. And Sierra said something about my ability as a writer, and I wanted to go outside for a walk to sort of cool off a little bit. And I decided to come back first, and this is where my innocence comes into play, where I did nothing wrong. I wanted to remove her as an editor from the work as it was because I didn't want her to change anything while I was gone. And she really didn't want to do that, attempted to physically stop me. And I think I tried to leave, and you were so frustrated with me leaving that you just sort of lashed out.
Yeah, it was, it was the worst thing because so much of our arguing at that time was about his stupid book. And we were also working through, we had just gotten married. We got married in October. So we'd only by that time been married 2 months.
And you're working on a challenging book, which is.
Yeah. And we've had 2016 was a really busy year for us because we had dated previously and then got back together. We decided if we're going to date again, what's your intention?
Hang on. You had dated previously and then gotten back together. I feel like part of that story may be missing.
Yeah.
You may have edited just a little bit too much, Sierra, there. Chris, I know what you mean. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, so we met, we met in debate a long time ago. And we rode back from a tournament together, and he was the single most interesting person I've ever talked to in my entire life. We weren't dating at that time.
Until now.
We didn't date at that time, dated a little bit later. We were together for almost a year, broke up for just over a year, and then reconnected at the beginning of 2016.
Why did you break up? He wasn't working on another book, was he?
No.
Okay.
No, at that time, okay, so that's so I got accepted to a study abroad trip between my junior and senior year of college. I went to Ireland for 3 weeks and it was fantastic. I loved it there. But I came back so I came back with a little bit of the I'd bought in a little bit, especially because I was at college where it's, just fresh meat everywhere. I'd bought into very much the idea that somewhere out there is a completely perfect, totally ideal, in no way at all annoying person. And I just need to find that one person.
No, that is actually true. That is completely true. But I'm married, so you have to go with what else is out there. That's the challenge for all the other women. Sorry, go ahead.
No, what I have determined since getting married is that person just 99% of the time, my husband is the world's most adorable person. I love the crap out of him. You don't understand how much I love this man. I didn't realize how much I would feel like that when I was 21 and having come back from Ireland, being like, oh my God, there's a huge world out here. Like, I was so like starstruck and whatever. So I came back kind of, I'll admit now, at the time I didn't think I was, but definitely now I can see that I was sort of already emotionally stepping myself back and keeping some other options open and stuff and thinking about like the big world out there, and that Chris and I were he has been committed and been the kind of guy who wanted to commit and wanted to have a family and wanted to be a husband and all of those sorts of things. He's always been that way and throughout our entire time dating. And at that time, I wasn't ready for that. And so through some well-placed proclamations, I decided that we should break up. And so we did. And we tried briefly to be friends for a little bit. And in addition to being full of really smart declarations, I'm also extremely jealous. So we had to stop being friends too.
Oh, yeah. No, like once you've dated, this whole let's be friends stuff. I mean, maybe it worked on Seinfeld, which is probably what your grandparents watched. But it doesn't work in real life because it's like, hey, lady, I used to bang. Let me tell you about the new lady I want to bang. That's what friends do, right?
Yeah, that's exactly.
No, that's not.
That's exactly what's going on. Well, and so I mean, I don't want to dig too much into all the nuance of it, but in the time between when we broke up and when we got back together, I dated a guy who'd been one of my back burner guys because, like I said, I was keeping my options open. Which, in hindsight, I just want to shake myself, but it's what you did when you were 21. So I dated my back burner guy, and I had the oh shit moment of I don't want to accidentally make the wrong guy's babies, and then I swore off sex for the next year and a half until Chris and I got back together.
Wait, you had
I was like, nope.
puck past the goalie scare?
Yeah, I was a couple of days late, and I was like, holy shit, we already broke up, and I have no intention of having this guy in my life, and it was it was not a good time.
Well,
for 4 days. It was terrifying.
You should mention the conversation about our skeletons in our closet.
Well, okay, so I feel like I hope you have the reaction I'm expecting because I'm 90% confident you're going to laugh at this also. So, when you're dating somebody at the beginning and you're talking, you've been dating them for a little bit, and then you're like, should we go exclusive? And date each other, just each other, whatever. So in that conversation, there's usually sort of the divestment of your deepest, darkest skeletons. And so mine has always been that I'm a lifelong Republican. And as someone who lives in the Seattle area, I'm a pariah. So that's one I like to get right out there that I was a Tea Party patriot when that was a thing. I've been a Republican my whole life. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh on the radio. Yes, I was a classic Republican. I've gone further right, much to my chagrin, ever since. But
it's not that you've gone further right. It's just that the world keeps pushing you further right. Is that?
Yes.
If people would meet you in the middle, that'd be a whole different matter. But
even my beautiful, wonderful, very very normal parents have had to go further and further right because the world is leaving them behind as it marches left. So anyway, so that's my skeleton. His was that he had done meth.
I'm sorry, did you say math? Because math is tough. Math is challenging, and that can be an incompatibility.
No, he was an accounting major, so he had.
Okay,
he,
math
he was
and math.
competent. So he did do math.
Right.
He also did methamphetamines. So yeah, apparently, unbeknownst to me, in the like sexual market value, like hard drugs and republicanism are roughly equivalent.
No, really?
Yeah.
I hear only one of them makes your teeth fall out. I can't remember which one.
I know, right? I know. Yeah. So
Now,
that was.
Chris, do you mind if I ask for a wee bit of backstory there, or do you want to just keep
sure.
moving?
No, go ahead.
No, that's a different guy. That's not Chris. Chris is not a meth addict.
Oh, the other guy had done.
Yeah.
Wait,
No,
the guy
yeah.
you thought you got pregnant with had done meth?
Yeah. So needless to say, we didn't date for much longer after that.
No, I've never done that.
Okay, I'm just trying to keep track of this rotation here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
No, that's so.
No,
so you're not only
just
concerned about being pregnant, but possibly a child with like squid arms, 3 nipples, and a melon head.
Yeah, no. So I mean, like, this is like, immediately. So after Chris and I dated, I dated this other guy. Found out that I'm a Republican. He's like, great, I do math, and I'm like, whoa, or I did. And then I was like, okay, well, obviously we have different life paths. So we parted ways, and then I was a little bit late, and I was like, oh shit, like.
Mine is not heading towards homelessness, cannibalism, and prison.
This is not what I had in mind for my life. And it was the beginning of, I guess, sort of my red pilling toward seeing through the feminist mantra, because there are a lot of places where that breaks down for me, where like it doesn't being and it's not even like I was sexually promiscuous, and I'm obviously sitting here with my husband now, but like I was never super casual, but I definitely didn't view it as something that was like super terrible if you had sex before marriage. Obviously I had sex before marriage, but I'm starting to see all the places where those little nuggets of those kinds of ideologies can slip into even someone who was really pretty traditionally and conservatively raised. And
it's everywhere. Yeah, the promotion of promiscuity is everywhere. Mostly aimed at white girls. But yeah, no. And by the way, I just wanted to mention that, Chris, I just wanted to know, man to man, if you're going to have one of the back burner guys date your ex, you want it to be the meth guy, because she's just going to come running back. Like, it's hard to look worse than the meth guy. So, once she's had sex with the meth guy and maybe thought she was pregnant, I think your sexual market value kind of goes up a little bit. And I think is that fair to say, Sierra, that you kind of experienced that a little bit?
Oh my God.
Not to pat myself on the back too much, but I'd actually told her when she was contemplating breaking up with me after Ireland, like, look, you're not going to find a better guy than me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I always thought with the girls who weren't dating me, it's like, you're kidding, right? Like, what are you looking for? What are you waiting for? I'm a great boyfriend and a great husband. And so what was it, just out of curiosity, what was it with this other guy? I mean, what was so appealing about him?
Well, I mean, bearing in mind that I was a 21-year-old girl who was at university and I was in the business school. So all of the people, I mean, in the scheme of like, if I had to make a recommendation to other girls about where to find your prospective mate, good God, go hunt out the business school, because you've got nothing but freaking accountants and finance guys and like people who are going to be very, very wealthy and probably not.
If you can stay awake. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah, that's where you go to get reasonable guys who'll be great providers, right?
Yeah. And at the biggest one was that he had really, really nice hair. That was the like, saw him across the room and I was like, that guy's pretty cool. And that was the extent of my great logic.
And this is not a lot of people know this, although this is widely known throughout human history. All guys with great hair are stone evil. This is the one. It's where I started from my moral education, was guys with hair, particularly great hair, stone evil. And that was my first major contribution to ethics. And then I came up with UPB just as an afterthought.
Nice. Yeah.
Especially when they have mustaches, right?
Yeah.
And they're drummers. Wait, don't get me started. No, stay focused on listeners. Stay focused on listeners. All right.
So, So, I mean, that was my like, oh shit moment. And I decided I I realized what that meant to be like a totally involuntary statistic. I was like, holy shit, I'm smart, I'm capable, I have a good education, I have all this potential, and I was gonna fuck it up on a guy like this? No way am I ever gonna put myself in peril of accidentally mixing genes with someone who I don't want to mix genes with. So I mean, I dated a little bit more during the next year, but I also was busy as all get out. I was finishing school, so that was senior year. So I was finishing school, and then I went to work full time. So I was working while I was in college. So I graduated without any debt. I lived at home with my parents, who didn't murder me for some reason, even though I was terrible while I was in college, and made it through college with my degree, with no debt, and a job, full-time job when I came out. So I was busy as all get out by the end of school year, so I didn't have time to do a ton of dating anyway. But it was that school stuff and the work stuff that, like, as soon as I got out, I was at work all the time, and I immediately burnt myself out. And I discovered how catty people are. So more backstory on me, I was homeschooled. So I skipped over a lot of that, like, high school BS, and I was I mean, with the exception of a little bit of dating, I pretty much had my blinders on mostly through college, where I was really pretty focused on trying to get my degree and working and stuff like that. So I really didn't do a lot of the interpersonal crap with other people. So when I came out at the office and I was suddenly there all the time, I worked at a helicopter company. I worked at a flight school. It was a great job, and I loved it.
Sorry to interrupt. A right-wing person who works at a helicopter factory. I'm just anticipating all of the comments we're going to get in the video for this. A right-wing person who works at a helicopter factory. And if you don't understand that reference, you will when you read the comments below.
I have several pilot friends, and I happen to know
they give tours.
All I'm saying is they give tours, and I happen to know that the inside of a Robinson R44, it's just a handle that you flip up and flip to the side, and doors open. I'm just saying. That's all you need. That's all you need to know.
Was the helicopter company called Leftists? Sing after me. I believe I can fly. Anyway,
I think it was called Hans Hermann Hoppe's Physical Removal Services.
Right. All right, go on.
Actually, and the guy who owned it is a conservative as well. So the way I got these, I had 2 jobs while I was in college, and the way that happened was my boss was my boss at both jobs. He made his money in fishing. I worked as an accounts payable accountant for a fishing company, and then he took that money and decided to become a helicopter pilot, and then ended up buying the flight school where he trained. So I worked for the same guy, and he was a very awesome conservative, right-leaning guy. Greg was awesome. He was a great guy to work for.
Right.
But I did while I was the thing on working at a flight school though is we had one female pilot, and I feel like you might be able to guess where this is going. So we had a bunch of male students, mostly vets who were using their VA benefits to become pilots, and one female pilot, and the amount of time it took for the Sierra screwing the students rumor to get around was like 0 flat. It was.
Sorry, I just missed that. The what rumor?
I swear to God, one of our pilots became convinced that I was having sex with the students. That I was being improper. As in my official capacity as someone who filed paperwork on behalf of these students, that I was acting improperly with them outside of work hours.
Right.
Now, to be fair, you did go out and grab a sandwich with one, which is basically sex.
Which is basically sex, yeah. So, yeah.
So, okay, they did just heard sandwich, and they thought of you and 2 students. They didn't think of bacon, lettuce, tomato. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was just mind-blowing amounts of drama. I've never experienced not only somebody being catty like that, but also specifically women trying to tear each other down like that. I had never, I mean, she was at least 15 years my senior at that time. I mean, seriously, like, this was an adult woman who had nothing to do to compete with me, but I can understand why she was frustrated that I was suddenly there all the time and I was making all these administrative changes and I was actually, like, demanding that the pilots do some of the ancillary stuff to their job that they were supposed to be doing, you know. So, I mean, I can understand why she would be really annoyed with me, but the idea that, like, and so the way to get back at Sierra is to tell everyone that she's screwing the students is just, like, freaking beyond me.
Right. But not
anyway,
uncommon, sadly.
Not uncommon, sadly. Yeah. So anyway, that was the summer after I graduated. That fall, I was trying to, I mean, there were a series of misadventures. I was trying to get my life together as far as, like, reining in the amount of BS I was having to deal with. So I was cutting back on hours and not working so much, and I was trying to go to the gym, and I tried to write a book and stuff. So I got about 30,000 words into a book about Ireland, which is still my favorite thing. And I was writing a little bit about Catholicism, and I realized I didn't know anything about it. So I was like, okay, well, I better research this. And then I was like, well, I don't know that much about Christianity in general. It's been available to me my whole life, but I never really like, for instance, I never bothered to read the Bible. So I did. So I started reading, I started with the Gospels. I still haven't read the whole, it's a big book, but started with the Gospels, and I did eventually become a Christian at the beginning of 2016. And for me, it was like a very, very de facto and matter of fact kind of thing, where I was just looking at my life and realizing that the things that I cared about all pretty much consistently pointed in a Christianly direction. And I was like, this is literally, like, the one thing I'm not doing and actively participating in. So anyway, that was me becoming a Christian. But it's my little testimony thing that I say to other Christians, that, like, and it's the God's honest truth, that 2 days after I admitted and acknowledged to God that, like, look, I am not in charge of my plan. I'm not in charge of my life. I'm clearly trying to muscle my way through this. It's not working. Literally within 48 hours, Chris just sent me a friend request on Facebook. And I was like, well, how the hell are you?
Right. And
in that interim, we both had... So we started talking again, and we were both like, okay, look, if we're gonna do this, we gotta, like, what's your plan? Well, I'd like to get married. I'd like to have kids. And we both, he's still wanted to get married, wanted to have a lot of kids. We'd initially, when we dated previously, we'd always talked about having, like, 4 kids or something like that. We
Beautiful.
both had, we both had been moving further to the right, so now we both were kind of like, well, I mean, what about 6, you know? I think, you know, if we could do it, I mean, like, you know, let's have as many as we can have. So we were like, if we're going to do this, I'm not here to joke around. So we got back together at the end of January, got engaged in April, got married in October. So pretty
right.
bam, bam, bam.
Good. Good.
Babies later this year, ideally.
Does that happen?
Right.
Not like I haven't made one yet, but I mean, we're practicing vigorously.
Excellent. Well, great. That's I appreciate the backstory. That's good to know. Is there anything, Chris, you wanted to add?
Well, I mean, I don't think so.
Much of the story.
Not really. Going back to sort of the reason for the call, I guess, something that might be relevant is that Sierra is not the only woman I've gotten to physically attack me before. My sister goes to Berkeley.
Oh dear. Well, first of all, she's your sister. Secondly,
right.
Berkeley.
Right.
Well,
She's not attacking you. She's bringing down the patriarchy.
Right.
Well, I'm worried about her. Okay, fine. You talk first.
Well, I mean, she's actually beginning to get rather sick of the social justice thing. She didn't quite agree with me when I said that Black Lives Matter was a terrorist organization. I was a truck driver at the time, so I got to swing through there every once in a while on Icke deliveries or whatever, and we got to chat. And she's quite sick of the SJW stuff, but she's got friends who are, you know, illegal immigrants, for example. And I don't remember what the conversation was exactly, but we were at my parents' house and we were discussing, I don't know, either Trump or immigration or something. And she got extremely upset at me. And I don't remember exactly how I responded, but it was something that made her storm off. And then she come back and attempted to Richard Spencer style clock me in the face. I mean, she's a, you know, 17, 18-year-old girl. I'm like a 23, 24-year-old guy with martial arts experience. I just like, could basically just let her hit me and nothing bad happens. So I just sort of walked away from that. But I've also pissed off.
Which is to say, he was asking for it, but that's okay.
Right. I was dressing provocatively.
Yeah.
But I've also annoyed Sierra's mom, and she's never gotten into any altercation like that too. Now, we were talking on the phone at the time, so
but she was about ready to murder him.
Yeah. So this is not to excuse any of these actions, but it does make me wonder if there's something that I might have done to sort of instigate it. Because I mean, with domestic violence, when men are committing violence against their wives, there's usually something that the wife did to escalate things on a path of escalation as well.
Well, sorry, remind me, Chris, what you said to your sister right before she clocked you.
I actually don't remember, because she had left for about a minute or so, and then she came back. But it was something rather dismissive of an emotional non-argument that she'd been making.
Right. So you in both situations you pricked female self-esteem or female vanity.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and just to throw one last detail of this into the mix, his sister is measurably extremely brilliant. My mom has been tested and is in is Mensa level, and I'm no fool either. So I mean, these are three very, very intelligent women who were at the very least I've witnessed being just brought to tears by how infuriating Chris can be when you're arguing with him. It can sometimes feel a little bit like you're negotiating with a terrorist.
Hang on. So what's infuriating about him when you argue?
So he has a thing that he's tried to explain to me, because obviously like I think most normal people do, we will argue and then have like the meta argument for the next like 2 days afterward. The argument about arguing, and he's told me on a number of occasions that like his dad would sometimes come home from work. His dad works in finance, and his dad would come home and not yell at anybody in particular, but just be on a very short fuse, like very clearly agitated and very visibly like anxious about the stock market or whatever. And that Chris never wanted to be that visibly out of control of his own emotions. Is that an okay characterization?
Yeah, that's about right.
So that's to that end, he stays extremely implacable during arguments. And now a lot of this stuff is stuff that we have been working on, because throughout our relationship, I try really, really, really hard to be very clear about specifically, not just like that you should do this or, you should stop being like that, but very specific, this is the behavior that I need changed. Can you swap this phrase for that phrase? Things like that. I try really hard to be very like doable and very specific and very clear about what it is that I'm upset about. And it's part of why it's so frustrating when I get to a point where I feel like there's just nothing I can say to him that is making any sense at all. So one of the things he said is that he doesn't want to be like his dad, who is very visibly emotional and very visibly gets upset. So he maintains such a flat affect, even in an argument in which I've gotten really angry and I've started to yell and to get upset. And to his credit, he has never yelled at me. He has never physically touched me during an argument. He has never picked up an object and thrown it. I mean, he's has never done anything. But to the flip side of that is also it doesn't ever feel like he's really coming with me as far as how angry he is too. He feels like it looks, as a person who's getting progressively more and more upset, it sounds like he's just staying cool and rational and being reasonable, and you look more and more like an idiot. And as that happens, I can't not continue to spiral up into more being upset to try and provoke him into reacting to me with any level of emotion at all. And it's like,
why do you need him to hang on? Why do you need him to react to you with the level of emotion that you want? What I mean, if he doesn't do that, if he stays inscrutable, as they used to say, if he stays dispassionate, what's bad about that? What's wrong with that?
Well,
I'm just
things.
curious. I don't have an answer. I'm just what it means to you.
Yeah. No, two things. One is that it's just it makes you feel like you're going a little bit crazy to be very emotionally upset at somebody who keeps refusing to say anything that carries any emotional weight and kind of not acknowledging, not verbally acknowledging or saying like, I get that you're upset or anything like. I mean, he never says anything to that effect. He deals with he theoretically is dealing with the argument of what I'm saying, and at least in a marriage relationship, like you can't always meet me with only logic and reality. Like sometimes the biggest logic and reality thing that you need to deal with right now is the way that I feel. I'm your wife. You know, we have like I am an emotional person.
You want your feelings to win a debate?
No. I don't want them to win a debate, but sometimes the thing that we are arguing about carries a hurt feelings or carries a personal implication that now has metastasized into. So like with the what brought us to that level with the argument about his book is that, you know, in the process of editing, this book was always something that was pulling time away from me in my mind.
No. I'm sorry, I've given you a lot of latitude, but I gotta keep you focused on this part. Like the history of the book, I can't go there. So let's get down. There's an idea or an argument that's at the basis of this that we just need to find out what it is. Whether it's right or wrong, we just need to find out what it is.
No, so I did figure that. Okay, so two things about the way that
I wasn't done.
Oh, sorry.
I wasn't done.
Sorry.
So there is a cliche, you know. Listen, you're not the first male-female couple where he's too rational and she's too emotional. Trust me, you are not alone in this planet and this reality. But sometimes if you feel like you're losing an argument rationally, you get upset and then you demand the person deal with your emotions because you're not getting what you want intellectually. You can't get there intellectually, right? And so it can feel, and I'm not saying this is happening, but it can feel like an unfair tactic. If, as the man, you're beginning to win the argument and then the woman gets really emotional and then demands that you deal with the emotions, it's like that's kind of a red herring because you're trying to decide something, especially when it's around a book and editing and who's going to edit and how it's going to go and so on. So, I mean, Chris, I don't want to speak for you, but if that does resonate, we could start from there. You know, that it's like, well, we're trying to discuss, you know, passionately or intensely or whatever, we're trying to discuss something factual based or something practical based or something with a defined outcome. And next thing you know, I'm being demanded to deal with feelings rather than finish the debate.
That's exactly it. And ironically, it was something that I became frustrated with my dad, actually, because he would, whenever he started to lose he's a huge Obama supported Hillary Clinton, huge Rachel Maddow fan. You know the type. He's not. I don't think a progressive in his heart, but he's become sort of ideologically possessed by a particular information bubble. And whenever he starts to lose an argument, he gets sort of flustered and flounders and gets generally agitated. And he was never abusive or particularly potent in his anger or anything. But it was very it was the wall beyond which conversation ended. There was no debate with just raw irritation and frustration. And I hated that growing up because we were always taught, use your head. I was like, well, now I use my head, and there's an emotional barrier here. It always seemed like an unfair tactic to me, and it was one of the reasons why I would force myself. And I actually cried very easily as a kid, and it took a lot of personal training to get myself not to do that, to be able to separate my emotions. Not completely, you know, you're not uninformed by your emotions, but you don't express them in a way that's unfair.
Right. So if someone's losing the argument, I'm not saying this is the case necessarily with your wife, but if someone's losing the argument and then they say, I'm really upset now and you're a bad person for not dealing with my emotions, that kind of feels like a dick move for me when it comes to debates.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I know that it is, and that's why I said previously, like, I try really hard to make it very specific about this behavior needs to change for this reason, and like this is what I need from you.
Wait, sorry, his behavior needs to change for some reason?
That's a general term for like there's. So, for instance, in previous arguments when we were on the phone or we were long distance or whatever for some period of time. I noticed that we would have a lot of arguments that weren't like interpersonal, but they would get really heated about topics, much like what we're doing now is that we've gotten married. But like, he has a really annoying habit of not at all affirming or addressing the fact that he even heard you. And then he will say his next point, which is usually something building off of what you said. But it's like the difference between saying, here's an example, and then somebody else goes, here's a very similar example that has a couple of striking differences. And then you're like, okay, are you like repeating what I just said? Are you agreeing with what I just said? Are you like, what do you like? I know that that's a different situation, which that also applies, but like that doesn't seem to apply to what we're talking about now because of these specific differences that are the thing that make these two examples different.
All right, hang on. All right. You've been married for how long now?
5 months.
Right. Can I pull age?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. 15 years. You've chosen each other. You're going to make 322 babies together. So you don't get to want to change each other anymore. I'm serious. This is the one thing that is such a useless and waste of time in marriage. I need you to be different. I need you to alter what you're doing. I need you to take this different approach. I need you. No. You don't go out, research a computer, buy a computer, and then say, well, I need you to have a different processor, and I need you to have different memory, and I need you to have different graphics card, and I need you to be a different operating system, and No. You've chosen each other. There's nothing to fix with who you've chosen. There's an arrogance in wanting to change other people, first of all, where you say, well, what he does is so annoying, and therefore he needs to change what he's doing because I'm annoyed. But that makes your emotions dictators. And by dictators, I don't mean like Kim Jong-il. I mean, they dictate how the other person should behave. My feelings dictate your actions, should dictate your actions. No. That is a roller coaster that you will never, ever be able to get off.
Well, okay, hang on, because the end of that story is that so we would have these stupid arguments about like not. I don't feel like you're addressing what I just said, and with I thought a lot about it. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I was like, okay, the thing I need you to say is to just add yes and then continue. And I swear to God, he started doing it and he started implementing it because the thing is, we both want to be having productive arguments. We want to talk about these things, and we spend a lot. I mean, for a period of time, he was truck driving, and so that meant I was able to be on the phone with him as much as like 4 or 6 hours a day. I mean, seriously, we talked so much. So talking is our favorite thing to do, and the idea that there's ever a subject that we can't talk about it that we're really struggling with because it falls behind one of those emotional barriers is something that neither of us want to perpetuate. And so trying really hard to find strategies for how can we keep the wheels of that conversation moving. And so things like him saying yes and things like I have improved a lot in our arguments where I've started to recognize, because he does a slightly different thing when we're having an argument that starts to get emotional. If I pull any kind of emotionality, he hates this characterization, but I swear to God that this is what's happening. He kind of pulls his logic, his ability to give me any grace on misstepping words goes straight to zero. As soon as he starts feeling emotional.
Hang on. Do you want him to be a pushover?
No, and
okay. So listen.
And the point of this is not
to
talk about him, but to talk about me.
No, I get it. So
Yeah.
Sierra, you don't want Chris to be a pushover. Do you want him to be rational?
Yes.
Do you want him to get carried away with his emotions or by his emotions to the point where he becomes irrational.
No.
So far, he's not a pushover, he's rational, and he doesn't get swept away by his emotions. Things that you respect, right?
Yes.
So far, how is this annoying when it's things that you want?
Because it has been an evolution to get to this point, and we've reduced the amount of annoyance as the techniques that we both are implementing in these arguments are improving. So, overall,
okay, but we're not talking about tiny increments. We're not talking about tiny increments, Sierra. We're talking about you scratching him in the face. If it was tiny increments, we probably wouldn't be having this call, right? You have something in your head where that is somehow in the moment, and I know you don't like it and you haven't done it again, which is great, but there's something in you where it's like, okay, that's legitimate. And we need to know what you believe deep down that allows that to be legitimated in the moment in your mind, right?
Right.
So he behaves better than you do in debates, right? In arguments, because he doesn't get over emotional. He hasn't scratched you. You say he never laid a hand on you in anger. Doesn't raise his voice, right? So he behaves better than you, right?
Yes.
So who the hell are you to lecture him about how to behave when he behaves better than you? Why shouldn't he tell you how to behave, since he doesn't do the things that you don't like that you do? I don't quite understand. You're like the fat person lecturing the lean person on what to eat. He behaves better, so why shouldn't... Look, there are areas where you have better ideas and you're better at stuff, and you should it's about the division of labor, right? Stuff my wife's better at, stuff that I'm better at, and we give each other those sphere of influences. So I'm not sure why you're lecturing him about how he should change when he behaves better than you do. You don't want to give that up, right? You don't want to cede that authority to him, that he has something to teach you in this area. Why not? What's wrong with him being better than you at something and teaching you how to do it better?
Well, Sierra's very competitive. I guess that might be a start.
Well, if you're competitive... No, that's not the answer. That's a very, very nice white knight answer, Chris. Let me tell you this.
Oh, it was more of a joke than anything else.
No, it wasn't. Come on. If she's competitive, then she should want to learn from you. Like if I'm really competitive at something, I'd want to learn from people who are better than me so I could be even better at what I do. So competitive means coachable, right?
Well, okay, so this, the face scratching incident happened in December, and we've had a couple of decent sized arguments since then, and an ancillary detail also about...
No, why are we talking it? This better be an important ancillary detail, or this is the last interruption you get.
Please bear with me.
Okay.
So please bear with me. I promise this relates. So I don't take any hormonal birth control, and so for me, my experience of my cycle is completely my hippie organic. Any man who has ever proclaimed that women have wild mood swings, yes, we do. It's a real thing. I highly encourage more women to do it, because I think the more you medicate yourself out of your own biological experience, the less you understand how your body works and how you work and how your actual brain works. But one of the things I know about myself is that in the couple of days right before the end of the cycle, I get this first of all, I'm obviously a number of other premenstrual things that make you weird as a girl, but also specifically, I really consistently for a 3 or 4 day period will have this low grade migraine, and I will lose access to entire sections of my vocabulary. So a bunch of my nouns will go away.
Oh, so what you're saying is that there are times in debating when, for reasons that aren't that you're even worse at it objectively, right?
Yeah.
Because of
exactly.
Right. So then you should have
that are just as contentious, and can get through them just fine at any other time of the month. But there's certain times when I just can't communicate effectively, and then he's not necessarily giving me very much grace either. And then that's when I am
okay. So if you know this about yourself, right? Hang on. If you know this about yourself, then you should not have debates during those times, right?
Yes.
Because you're bad.
It's really hard, though. They start super stupid things. I mean, like every argument does. It's a stupid trigger, and so it's hard not to get looped into them. What I'm trying to do, and what I'm striving for right now, is I also have a really hard time letting go of an argument once I've started it. I don't want to like step away from it, but I'm trying really hard to
you
like
have a hard time letting no. Come on, Sierra. You have a hard time letting go of an argument because Chris doesn't succumb to your emotional stuff.
Well,
and so you don't end up being able to
I
satisfy yourself with regards to victory or even détente because he's not emotional enough to get sucked into this stuff that you do when you can't win logically.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's hard to let go of a loss. I agree.
Yeah, so I will, but it's hard to walk away. It's not even like, I mean, cognitively, I know that it's not necessarily a loss if we come away having met minds on whatever it is that we're talking about. So I know cognitively, but emotionally in that moment, it's really hard to say, can we talk about this again in 10 minutes and let me like sing my favorite song in my head for a little while and then come back. But that's what
okay, let's go back to what I was talking about before. What's wrong with him being better at debating than you are?
Nothing at all. I want...
Now, that's a real thing, though. There's things that my wife is better at than I am, and there's lots of them. And she has authority in those areas. I can put in my viewpoint, I can make suggestions, but she has authority in those areas. Because competence. Right? In the same way, like in a non-romantic relationship, my dentist has authority over my teeth, right? She says, you need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, okay, I'm do X, Y, and Z, right?
Well, no, I recognize that he is better at this than I am.
So what's wrong with just surrendering to his expertise in this area?
It's entirely a purely emotional one. I don't know why.
Okay, good. So we don't know.
Because
good. You don't know. No, okay, so that's important.
I don't want to lose these conversations with him either. Like, they're always about something topical. Stuff about, like, you know, how we run the house and whatever is easily settled one way or the other. Because, like you said, I mean, sort of division of labor. It's really easy to settle.
No, like, but Sierra, you are losing them.
Step around the house.
Hang on. You are losing them because you're getting over emotional. And once you get over emotional, you get over invested in victory. You get over invested in a win-lose situation. And so you've already lost. Right. You've already lost when you get over emotional. And when the conversation shifts from whatever objective thing you're trying to debate and figure out into managing your emotional haywiriness, then you've both lost. There's nothing productive that can come out of that other than, nothing productive can come out of it other than the knowledge of, let's not do it that way. So what's wrong with him? Okay, tell me, Chris and Sierra, what does Chris have authority over in the marriage? Because you can't negotiate everything all the time. Like with my dentist, it's not 50-50. She tells me what to do with my teeth, and she says, here's a polishing, here's a... Good, okay, fantastic. So what does Chris have where he has authority? And what does Sierra have where she has authority? And this doesn't mean the other person can't disagree, but just fundamentally, right?
I would say I have authority simply from time invested in reading and researching and thinking on matters of how we align ourselves politically, religiously, and socially, I think. With spending time with friends.
Now, is that authority that you both recognize?
Yeah. He's we have a little bit of conflict on, well, I'm not going to hedge it. Yeah, I mean, we have disagreements about it, but, he's...
well, I enjoy the disagreements, too. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, as far as politics, he is the primary gleaner of I mean, he's been listening to you since your kid was a toddler. So I mean, like he brought me to you,
right.
and a bunch of other YouTubers, and we don't have a TV because he didn't want one. We have a ton of books because we both love books, but
right. But you don't have a lot of interpersonal disagreements about that stuff, right?
No, yeah. So I mean, well, and then some of the little interpersonal arguments that we might have are occasionally Chris is much more externally socially motivated than I am. I really am pretty much content to hang out with Chris and like my mom and like my one friend, and I'm like, I'm good. I'll text my one friend once a month or something and just make sure she's alive. Like I don't need a lot as far as like social engagement, but Chris is much more externally motivated. So we have his best man comes to dinner probably once a week, and we see his other groomsmen and his girlfriend probably at least twice a month. And he's gotten us involved in a couple of different social groups for like people who are our age and our political persuasion. And so between those two groups, I mean, we're busy almost every weekend. We spend a lot of time on Sundays with my mom and my parents, and we spend.
Okay, I'm sorry.
a lot of time with his family.
You're an
So
oversharer in this conversation. I need shorter answers because I've got
So
6 callers tonight. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
So there are areas where where Chris has authority, and what about you, Sierra? Where are the areas where you have authority?
I mean, I run everything that happens on the inside of the house. So, I mean, I do all of the like houseworky things, and kind of the basic operations of the house. I have a background in accounting, so I run all of our finance stuff. I filed our taxes, stuff like that. As far like the daily schedule of how we just interact has been an ongoing negotiation, but I think the lion's share of it is now set by. It's pretty equally, but it used to be more kind of Chris task accomplishment oriented. So I mean, a lot of the nuance of how we run our house is centers around Chris's schedule and Chris coming home from work and which of Chris's friends we have to see and things like that. So.
And does that work? It works fairly well, right? Where the one person has authority and the other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if one of you is better at arguments or debating or whatever it is, then that person should have authority. I mean, why not? I mean, if let's just say Chris is better at it, less emotional, less right, and more rational, then let him be in charge of it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, you can try something else, but let him be in charge of it. Like, hey, remember we got this whole thing where you get too emotional and it goes to a bad place. So let me just this decide. And this doesn't mean you have to self-erase, because you're not self-erasing when you're giving someone authority over you that you have chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And Sierra, are you very attractive physically?
Yes.
Apparently.
Chris, what are you giving her out of 10?
9.
So she's used to deferral from men, right? Eggs.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me bow down before the eggs, right? So Sierra, you're used to guys
there, yes.
bending your way, so to speak, because they hope you'll bend their way. But you're used to having that high sexual market value, which breeds male compliance, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so you could get what you want with Chris, and then you wouldn't like him as much anymore, right? You could get him to conform to your emotional extravagance, right? Or your emotional passions, right? You could get him to, okay, well, she's passionate, so I better tiptoe or I better step around. But you would not respect him if he did that. Do you know why you're with him? Because he's annoying to you. Because he won't bow down before you. Because he won't serve your emotional needs. You need him to not serve your emotional needs so you can remain romantically, physically, and sexually attracted to him. Because the moment you get what you want, what you think you want, you won't like the result. Guaranteed.
I'm just staring at him. I'm sorry. He's the thing is, as I said, he's been watching you a long time, so I've definitely heard this from him before. That if I bend too much, you will not like what I've turned into.
It's the old joke about the woman who wants her boyfriend to shave and then breaks up with him to go for the guy with the beautiful, luxurious beard again.
Yeah, listen. When you're thinking of having babies with a man, you need to test his strength. It's part of the courting and mating ritual, and it's not just particular to human beings. It's all sexually differentiated species. The man has to prove himself in some manner, right? So for some birds, it's building an elaborate nest. For others, it's bringing lots of food. You know, they have to prove themselves. For frogs, it's combat between the males and so on. And for other frogs, it's like the capacity to carry the babies up the branch on their backs. I mean, there's tons of fitness tests, of quality tests for men. And women do this, and I think it's unconscious, and I don't have any problem with it. No problem with biology or evolution or anything like that. But when you're thinking of having babies with a guy, you need to make sure that he's stable and strong. And so you get very emotional and you rage against him and you test his strength. Sure, that's perfectly natural. And you want him to conform to you, and he's put in this position, right, which is a very uncomfortable position for a man, which is, if you loved me, you would conform to my irrationality. Well, how can a man win with that, right? I mean, you don't want to conform and serve and feed irrationality or over-emotionalism or subjectivity or whatever it is. You don't, right? But at the same time, the woman's saying, well, if you loved me, you would. Bow down to me in this area. Sorry,
and Chris is particularly indomitable. Right,
that's why you're with him.
I know.
Like, you know, I want a man who's going to be very strong in the world, who's going to stand up for what he believes in so that I can admire his spine as straight as his penis. Oh, he's not bowing to me? That's really, really annoying. Well, come on, pick one, right? Do you want a guy who's going to fold to your irrational demands, or do you want a guy you can respect and love, who's going to be a great provider? And do you want to have children, Sierra, who are going to be able to wrap Dabby's steady spine around their little finger, who are just going to play him like a Stradivarius? No. You need him to be strong so your kids don't go mental, right? You need him to not be manipulated by your children's emotional storms. Doesn't mean don't be emotionally available, and it doesn't don't be emotionally accessible, and don't be sensitive, but it just means don't roll over. Because imagine if you push him around and then your kids come along and they push him around, what's going to happen to his capacity to go out into the world and get resources by not being pushed around? It won't go well, right?
It's not, yeah. One can't live one way in public and one way at home and expect to keep the two separate.
It won't work. No, it won't work. It won't work. It won't work. You need him to be annoying. I'm sorry. It's just the way that it works. Now, you don't have to spend the rest of your life being annoyed by him, but understand that him not bending to your emotionality is exactly what makes him fit to be the father of your children. Don't fuck with that.
I have no intention.
You have some intention.
Figuratively.
You have some intention.
How to make that.
You have some intention.
I have many intentions, but
listen, Chris, I don't mean to speak on your behalf. So how am I doing?
Spot on. I've been just letting you roll because you're nailing all the points.
Right.
Love it.
Yeah. Enjoy his strength. Take comfort and security in the fact that he's not going to be pushed around by emotionality.
But it's so annoying.
It is. I absolutely understand.
So attractive at the same time and so annoying.
It is. But you know what? Don't you have girlfriends that you can manipulate emotionally? Just get it out of your system and leave the man in your life alone?
No.
Well, her mom is a professor of psychology, so her best friend isn't easy to manipulate that way.
Oh, God.
And how does it work, Sierra, in your family? Your family of origin, I mean by that. So does your mom do any of this stuff? I mean, where did you do? You seem quite fluent in this, and maybe it's hormonal or maybe it's whatever, right?
I'll give you the cliff notes on my parents. So my parents are a very non-traditional situation. My dad was a Coast Guard rescue swimmer in the 80s when that first became a thing. So he swam with Navy SEALs and stuff like that. He's used to bodybuild, and he met Arnold Schwarzenegger at the gym and like worked out with him. I mean, like my dad is a big guy who looks like a Neanderthal. My mom got a PhD in psychology. My parents got married very, very young, when they were 20 and 21, so that my mom could follow my dad around while he was in the Coast Guard. And it was just, they moved up to Seattle in the early 90s, and it was, she was at the time the only college teacher at the community college where she got a job who was willing to teach online. And that was a really big deal because obviously the internet became a really big deal. And so she was a forerunner. And they figured out pretty quickly that, like, after my dad had gotten out of the Coast Guard, they figured out that his entire income was going to his uniforms and my daycare and stuff like that when I was first born. And or first, like a toddler. And they realized that it just didn't make financial sense for him to continue working, because I think this internet thing's really going to get going, and I think I'm going to be able to teach a lot and stuff. So my parents, my dad was a stay-at-home dad from 1995 until now. He never went back to work. And my mom
okay, I need to, I'm sorry, again, I mean, what I'm asking is the psychodynamics between your parents, not their resumes.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to, sorry. Okay. So that, like, that's their, I mean, my dad he did not set out to be a stay-at-home dad. My mom did not set out to be, the
Still not getting the psychodynamics between your parents.
Yes, go ahead and summarize.
Her parents are direct, no bullshit. They have zero tolerance for lying, and they'll call each other out if they think that they're beating around the bush or trying to manipulate each other.
Yeah. Well, and then they also do the, like, argue to the point of, like, we're both slightly crazy, and then realize how crazy it got, and then stop and go back to being normal. And so, like, it's the bell curve of their arguments. We'll get, like, escalate.
So do they have defined areas of authority that each other defer to?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So then, where do you get it from? I mean, surely they've told you about all of these areas of authority and how you need to divvy up division of labor and you hopefully have married someone that you trust with your money and your children, and so surrendering to the authority of someone that you trust is not an act of self-destruction but an act of self-affirmation, in that you say, well, of course I will give this person all my money, I trust them. I mean, why would I marry them if I didn't trust them, right? It's an affirmation of your choice of partners. So is the stuff that I'm talking about, have your parents talked about it with you?
Not this particular thing, and not in this particular way. My parents have been really not. I don't even want to say it's compromised, because there are obviously things that my mom still, 30 years into marriage, is complaining about the things that my dad does that are just, his various masculine idiosyncrasies that annoy the crap out of her. But
so your mother, hang on. Your mother is annoyed after 30 years by your father's certain aspects of your father's masculinity.
Yes.
Right. So that's where you're getting it from. You understand?
Yes.
You can continue to be annoyed by the fact that a man is a man. Somewhat less emotional, a little bit more emotionally stable. Under stress, the reason center activates in a man rather than the emotional center, which activates in a woman. Guess what? We're different. Celebrate it. Love it. Enjoy it. Men and women emotionally fit together as nice as our naughty squishy bits do. Enjoy. Don't try and turn him into you. You won't like it.
Yes. No, I know I won't, and I don't want to.
You kind of do.
But I want to also make it clear, like, it's not like my parents, it's not like my mom constantly natters on about my dad and how annoying he is. It's like there's like the one or two occasional things that pop up that are annoying that she doesn't pull any punches either. So she shares that those are things that are annoying. Mm-hmm. And they both try to, accommodate each other. But yeah, I mean, my mom is like a person holding on to this bull of a person who is my dad, who just runs around and does, all of his guy stuff, and she's along for the ride on those things, and he's with her on whatever income thing she does.
Does she view her continued annoyance for your father's character as a fault, as a problem, as an immaturity on her part?
No, and that's
right. So it's not a problem for her, which is why it never gets solved, right? Or if there is a problem, the problem is your father's behavior, not her wanting to change it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Give up.
I feel like it's a slight oversimplification
your
because
poison
they both
seeds.
try to be really forgiving about stuff.
No, just give up your desire to change the person. It won't work. And it's a way of condemning your own choice of the person. When you choose someone, give them all your heart. Here's the bit where I lecture you in a most annoying way, so get comfortable. When you love someone, give them all your heart, give them all your trust, give them all your resources, give them everything. If they hurt you, then move on, right? But you have chosen this man, you are married, you are planning a life together until death do you part, in sickness and in health, for better or for worse. And there's worse, right? You get sick. Your kids may, heaven forbid, get sick. There's going to be challenges, tough stuff in your life. That's the nature of being alive. Give that person everything. Give that person the exalted status of always being right. And you can both do this. And I know it's complicated and there's navigation. I mean, this is not a magic spell. But every time you say, this person is annoying, you're saying, I don't trust my judgment. To yourself. Why would I choose to be with an annoying person? Why would I choose to get married to someone who's annoying, who's unemotional, who's this, who's that, whatever, emotionally unavailable? No. Be with someone or don't be with someone. Don't be with someone like 1 foot on the boat, 1 foot on the pier. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm there, but I'm hedging. I'm in, but I'm out. I'm here, but I'm judging. I love, but I'm reserved. I approve, and I disapprove. No. Give that person everything. Everything. Why not? It's called love. Give that person, don't reserve this little acid bombs of I disapprove and this is a problem and you should change this and this is unacceptable to me and I don't like this and you got to manage my feelings, you got to change what you're doing so I feel better. Oh my God. It will turn into a nightmare in a way. It doesn't need to be that way. Give the person everything. If you end up, I don't know, I think you guys are going to do very well, and I think you're going to have a wonderful life together. You just got to sand down this, but, there's no, you'll listen back to this. I hope you will listen back to this, and you'll hear, like, I gave this great speech about leave him the way he is, or if you break him, you'll regret it, and you're like, but he's so annoying, right? The yes, but is the killer of true and glorious love. I do love him, but there is this thing that, right? Well, first of all, if you want to start criticizing other people's imperfections, you better damn well be perfect yourself. And I know for a fact that you're not, and I'm not, and no one is. So I don't like this. Well, I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to hand out these little cards. This is a good card because you did something nice. And this is a bad card because you did something. Like, exactly what is right and what is wrong throughout the long arc of life and in the long trials and joys of the future. What he's doing is right or what he's doing is bad, and he should just change it. Well, how about you try changing? You're handing out the black and white cards of approval and disapproval. And if you can't do that, don't expect someone else to change. If you can't change in yourself that which finds someone you claim to love annoying at times, don't expect them to change their behavior if you can't even change your perspective. Your own perspective is infinitely easier to change than trying to convince someone else to change. There is an arrogance that we all have. Trust me. I mean, I've been there. We all have this arrogance, which is to say, I know what you should and should not do. I know what is right. You're being annoying and you should change because objectively, universally, morally, abstractly, from my perfect standpoint of perfect behavior, I know for a fact that the fault is 100% yours and you must change. Good Lord. That's the script that runs in our heads, that comes from vanity and a fear of the giant relaxing surrender called giving someone everything. He's right. He's not annoying. He's perfect. Nothing needs to change in him. Nothing. Can you say that? Can you think that even? Nothing needs to change in him. And the only thing that needs to change in you is thinking that something needs to change in him. Doesn't mean you can't disagree. Doesn't mean you can't speak your mind against what the other person... I get all of that. But nothing needs to change in him. Nothing. Because you already chose him. And you don't get to tinker with what you already chose. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to make this call too long. I know you have a lot of other people on the line, but I, being 26, have got a long way to go still, and I don't plan on being the same person even 5 years from now, let alone 10. And I came into this marriage encouraging my wife to help me become the sort of person that I want to be. And to continue on that, is there a good way to navigate that, or is it better to keep the mindset of the other person as perfect? And I don't know how to phrase it. How do you navigate that desire to continue to improve while at the same time accepting that they are perfect as they are because you chose them?
Is a 5-year-old short just because she's 5?
I suppose so.
No. No, a 5-year-old is not short just because she's 5. She's shorter than someone who's 10 or 15 or 20, but she's not short because she's a kid. She is perfect in her height for where she is. Does that mean she's never going to grow? Does that mean she's never going to get taller? It's perfect for a baby to shit its own pants. It is not perfect for me to shit my own pants. You understand? The baby is perfect in shitting, and you'll find this green stuff that's like weird. The first one, it's like don't freak out, right? But the baby and babies have really, big asses. Big asses. It's like a convention of Jamaican nannies. It's like they have big asses. And it's perfect for them. It's absolutely perfect. Now, you wouldn't necessarily want to be, say, 25 with an ass like that. But babies, it's perfect. It's what they need, right? Babies' eyes are disproportionately large, right? Your eye is the only thing that doesn't change in size from birth to death. So they're disproportionately large relative to your body, which is why all the Disney princesses have these giant eyes to remind you of babies. It's all this creepy pedophilia crap. But anyway, the baby's eyes are weird. If you had like the head size body ratio, if you were an adult that you had as a baby, you'd be like on death's door. So babies are perfect. And we love them for the perfection of their physicality. And we love them for the perfection of their mental abilities, which, if you remain a baby your whole life, you're severely cognitively impaired. But a baby is perfect. And we love a baby for being perfect. Does that mean we don't expect a baby to grow? No, because part of the baby's perfection is the potentiality. Part of the baby's perfection is that I remember watching my daughter struggling and fighting mightily to learn how to turn over. Just roll over, something we all just take for granted. Oh, I left my coffee over there. Roll over and get it, right? My baby is perfect in her potentiality. And you, Chris, are perfect in your potentiality. Sierra, you are perfect in your potentiality. You do not need to be pulled. All you need is sunshine and rain. Like you pull on a rose bush, what happens? You just rip it out. Just pull it out of the earth and it dies. You don't pull at it. Its growth is innate within its very structure, within its biological structure. It gets sunlight, it gets nutrients, it gets water, it's going to grow. You guys get love and acceptance and trust, you're going to grow. You are perfect as you are. This does not mean that you never change, because your potentiality for change is part of your perfection, and trusting each other that you will grow based on love and acceptance and support, rather than nagging and nudging and pushing and pulling and punishing and praising, manipulation. That's not how things grow. That's how they can form, which is the opposite of growth. You know, if you're a tree, you grow as your nature is. If you are a clinging ivy, you grow as the wall is, right? You can't grow on your own. You're attached to something else. You're dependent for support upon something else, and you never achieve independence. If you have, like you've seen these big ivy-covered houses in England and other places, if the house falls down, so does the ivy. Whereas if the house falls down, the trees in the garden do not. Trust that growth will occur because the perfection that you chose for each other is curiosity, is intelligence, is humility, is a willingness and a desire to learn and new things and explore new things. You are perfect in your potentiality. An adult who is the height of a 5-year-old child has had stunted growth. But the child is perfect, though short, relative to an adult. It's perfect for its own height. And the perfection and the potentiality go hand in hand. And if you trust each other to grow based upon love, support, curiosity, all the things that you fell in love for and that you married for, if you trust each other to grow, which you should, because you're calling into this show, which means growth is going to happen no matter what. You've got the sunlight. You've got the nutrients. You've got the water. You're going to grow. You don't need to push and poke and pull and drag and pick. It's going to happen of its own accord. That is the perfection that you have found in each other. Trust that. You're perfect as you are, but perfect doesn't mean immobility. A baby is perfect as it is and in its potentiality, and the same is true for you.
Well, that's a beautiful answer to what was formerly a difficult question.
I do those once in a while. I won't tell you where they come from, but you can check out the video and watch me do my acrobatics. But that's what I would say.
No, we were mouthing to each other our awe at the off-the-cuff analogies and metaphors that just sort of stream from the show. It's one of the reasons why we enjoy listening so much.
This is how I can afford this magnificent studio wherein I stand. Also known as the Great Wall of Ice Thought. All right, can I move on to the next caller? Have we had enough utility?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Stefan.
It was helpful? It was useful?
Yes.
Very much so.
Yes,
Good.
very
Keep us
much.
posted, and best of luck with your rehearsals, I think you were saying before. All right, thanks very
Thank
much,
you very
guys.
much.
Absolutely.